cold January day, life changed in so many ways at once. As the day begun, I lived one life. As the day ended, I had begun anew, reborn with a new life, a new mission, reborn with a new vision. What may come, I don't know yet, but I am here alive, living my life to the fullest, with new love in my heart and soul, a gift to have, a gift to give, a new life of love, reborn.
Good afternoon. Whoops, nope. I'm about to do the wrong thing. Here we go. There we go. Hi. Good afternoon. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Teresa. I am your host to Wounds to Wisdom. And it is, I have to look at my calendar. Can't believe it's the 28th of August. It's the last live for me for the month. And this coming Tuesday, we will talk about the next law of the universe, which would be the 9th law of the universe. And I'll also incorporate some additions from the topic we're covering today. So, firstly, I sound better. I'm feeling better. I still feel a little ick, but I'm much better than I was. So hopefully you can hear me well. And if you can't, please let me know. And I haven't been wearing a mic, and many people do. So if there's ever any time where you can't hear me, please let me know. It's a gorgeous day here. It's been several lovely days. I hope there's more to come, because when you don't feel really well, you have a tendency, to hunker down and rest and renew. And that's what I've been doing. So I've not had the opportunity to really do much outside. But my garden is exploding with cherry tomatoes, Cherokee tomatoes, plum tomatoes, another kind I don't know the name of. Delicious. My eggplant is off the charts. And as we're talking, I forgot that yesterday I sliced up a whole bunch to dry out for eggplant parmesan. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I have my potatoes look like they're going to be phenomenal. Sweet potatoes, I'm not too sure about. And then I have some carrots, which look like they're going to do really well. Bunching onions look like they're going to do really well. I have 2 more cabbage heads left. One I'm going to gift to a friend from the dog park. So it's been a really great learning opportunity for me this past year. My cucumbers did not do well. I think there's 2 reasons for that. I have a front yard and I have a backyard. In the backyard, it didn't get enough sun and got covered up by all the tomatoes. The tomatoes just went banana cakes. In the front, we have some skunks, and I think the skunks have been nibbling on them, and they're just not doing their thing. Aria, hello, my friend. Welcome. I'm just chit-chatting trying to give people a chance to pop in before we dive into our topic of the day. Hello, sweet boy. My sweet boy's here. I don't know if he's going to come over and say hello or not. So anyway, the garden's just been magnificent and has been very regenerative for me. Considering that, it's just been a tough few days, weeks actually, with the cold. And I now think that allergies are kicking in because in New England, the trees are starting to change, leaves are falling, milkweed is bursting open and flying everywhere, goldenrod is everywhere. So anyway, I'm well, I'm blessed, I'm happy to be here and sort of back on track. And one of the reasons that I chose this topic, and it may, oh, I'm so sorry. Is that because you don't have the space to grow it or you don't have a green thumb, Aria? Come here, puppers. What are you doing? My little one is giving me the evil eye. So do you want to say hello to everybody? No, you don't want to say hello? Say hello. All right, you may sit down. Good boy. So I wanted to talk about finding our voice, finding your voice. And I'm going to do it from a male perspective and a female perspective because they're both very different. I know. Aria, I love the changing of trees. I really do. There is something magical, cathartic, regenerative about fall for me, more than spring, more than the summer, because I think what it does is it allows me to. You have a black thumb when it comes to plants. Okay, I'll give you that, my friend. Not everybody has a green thumb. And I think maybe next year I'll probably just do a tip or trick of what I've learned, but it depends on where you live. And, there's this thing, just for future reference, it's called a green stalk. You can do 3 high, 5 high, 7 high. And so you could plant some strawberries, you could plant beans or green beans or peppers or tomatoes, and that's all you can grow in it. And it's pretty self-sufficient. You don't really have to do very much to it. And you can put flowers in some of the pockets. It's really a magnificent device that was created. I'm hoping to save enough money to buy one for next year. And that I'm going to put most of my like strawberries, and I want to grow more peas. I grew peas. That's the other thing I grew that came alive. But anyway, back to finding your voice. I'm getting a little distracted when we talk about gardening. I get all lost. But our voice has been haunted by influences outside of our control. What we have control over is how we respond and to find our voice. And it really does depend on your age, your generation, where you're coming from, not about your education per se, but your decade, when were you born? What were the influences of the time? I was born in 1963. As I was growing up, there was a revolution happening, right? For women specifically. There was also wartime revolution where people were protesting Vietnam. And so there was a lot of breaking the chains of domesticity, right? We were redefining what it was like to be a woman. You weren't just a housewife. And I have absolutely nothing against being a housewife. I have nothing against being a stay-at-home mom. 2 of the best professions ever. So this isn't a judgment on any of that. It's what happens in this world, right? We're in turbulent times right now in 2025. It's been that way since about 2015. Because there were different elections going on, there were different politics that were happening, There, we then moved into COVID, which reshaped communication and interaction, human interaction. So, and now we're coming out the other side, but are we? And I know I'm struggling with that. So I wanted to talk about what other people are doing to navigate finding your voice and what does that mean. And then next week, I really want to morph into the implications of women being impacted by global events and within the United States as well. How are we being impacted by voices that want to silence us? My opinion, I am not a professor. I'm an experiencer. I keep saying that to everybody. So, really, what does sharing our voice really mean, or finding our voice really mean? It's not just about speaking up, it's about standing in truth, your truth, intuition, and worth. And who are we after all that trauma? Amen, sister. So lovely to see you. This is Mish. Misha is here today. Thank you for being here, my darling. So you and Aria, blessings. I'm so pleased that you're here because for me, this topic is so prevalent in our everyday society, right? It's and as I'm growing, as I'm learning to stand up for me, and what's important to me, I also don't want to be an isolationist. And I mean that from two places. I don't want to be an isolationist physically from the world. I don't want to shut down and hunker down and, be the cat lady, so to speak. But I also don't want to be somebody who can't have a conversation, an intellectual conversation about what does it mean. Oh, I'm sorry you're tired. You listen, girl. And both of you feel free to listen. I'm good at rambling. And I'm just going to sort of touch base on what I'm thinking, and it'll sort of cue it up for next week anyway. And maybe next week you guys will feel really engaged to hammer out the topic with me, because this is what I've been hoping for, is discussions, engaging discussions. And if I thought I could get people on a panel with me to just sort of talk about the topic, I would be all over it. But people are shy to get on here with me. So, and then I want to talk a little bit about, reclaiming power from these old narratives and being heard in spaces where women were once silenced. And so, what's today, the 28th, 2 days ago, women had the right to vote. It was our anniversary. And I always take a moment on that day to appreciate the women that came before. The women that fought so hard. Some lost their lives. Some were thrown into jail. Some were thrown into psych wards. Some were force fed. Some were electric shocked, for their opinions and for what they wanted, which was really simple. The right to vote, the right to have a credit card. I think we got the right to have credit cards or have a bank account in 1976, in the 70s, somewhere in there. I should have that written down. Maybe I'll have it ready for next week. And so I think some of the practical steps when we're journaling or we're creating affirmations, sorry, I'm still struggling with this dang throat. And I'm trying to watch my potty mouth. And since you girls are going silent, I'm not going to worry too much about it. One of the things that I think we could start in a journal is my truth is, right? Speaking from the heart in a safe circle here, or one-on-one, and then gradually expand it, because we don't have to be professors, right? Or teachers or political people or lawyers who are really good at debates and arguments. I'm not trying to, the difference is I'm not trying to convince you that I am right. And cussing or not, I know, right, girl? Claiming my voice, claiming my F words. Um, and from the male perspective, and I hope at some point some of the fellas will jump on, men have to find their voices too, their authentic voices, because it's not just the strength, but it's having vulnerability and presence and integrity. And over these, well, I'll go back to the 60s because that's what I can relate to. The 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the male role was flipped. Oh, look at this. Indigo's here. Thank you, Indigo. Hold on. She's putting it up on the screen for us. And I don't know why I try to read without my glasses. Where did I put them? Circa 1974, with the passage of the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, before the ECOA, it was common for banks to deny credit to women who required a husband or male relative's signature. Yes. So thank you so much, or permission. Here, she's giving more information. Permission, making it difficult for women to achieve financial independence. Amen and hallelujah. So I think, Scotty Boy's here. So he's got the male perspective. Yay, Scotty. I'm so happy you're here. And sorry, guys, I had some Italian ice, so my lips and my tongue are red because I had some cherry Italian ice, hoping to burst this scratchiness in my throat. Burst is not the right word, but so from a male perspective, their roles were topsy-turvy, right? They were providers. Now they're being required to be sensitive and vulnerable and communicative and equal with their partners, right? They're required to participate in the care of their children. Lakeside Laura, welcome, welcome, welcome. And so I think, I want the male perspective because obviously I'm not a man. And then we're going to get into other discussions because this is traditional roles. Then we have LGBTQI plus. LGBTQ plus. Hopefully I didn't forget one. But the point being, finding our voice and where we fit in this world. And how do we break it down, and how can men still be men if that's what they choose to be? How can they be enlightened as well as respected? And apparently there's a new COVID variant called razor throat tea. Oh no, I don't even want to know that. I mean, I do, but all right, well, that's good to know because this is 4 weeks plus, I think, for me. So, hi, Elizabeth. Thank you for being here. So, I really want to talk about this and practicing honest communication with our friends, with our partners, with our mentors, with each other here. Because for me, building this community is how I expand my comprehension of other people's perspectives. I don't want my voice to be the only voice, but I want to have my voice. And then how do we walk in the light of all of this? So on my healing journey, in my awakened journey, what does it mean to live with integrity, with compassion, aligning myself with my higher self, with God, who I believe in, with the divine, with Mother Earth. And what does all of this mean? And how do I get to do this for myself? Right? Um, the candle that we light doesn't diminish when it lights yet another flame, right? Every candle is bright and provides light. It doesn't mean the first candle that you lit is any less bright and valuable. And then, of course, for me, I like to share grounding practices, short breath exercises. Um, yeah, Scotty, I think we see what's shown, right? I think, and that's part of the discussion, because growing up and until my dad died, you were not going to take away what he thought a man was supposed to be, what a father was supposed to be, what a husband was supposed to be. Now, did he evolve a little bit over time? Yes. Teeny weeny, teeny weeny. From my, um, I'll share a story because, quite frankly, he would laugh if he were here. I'd come home from college and we were having dinner, and we had finished dinner. My mom was doing dishes, or my nana, one of them, and they had put coffee on. And believe it or not, we percolated back in the day. So the coffee was on the stove percolating. And when it was ready, and my father was sitting at the head of the table, and I would say he would, if he were to stand up and take 2 steps, the coffee was right there. And he would say to my mom, "Hey, get me a cup of coffee." "No, please, honey, would you get me a cup of coffee?" It was very, caveman. Don't bark. Don't even think about it. Neither of you guys. Sit down. So, and I'm sure somewhere in his heart, and maybe I'm saying this to make myself feel better, I think he was proud of my independence, but he always felt like I needed a man to take care of me to make sure I would be okay. And he feels like that was his greatest failure, by not somehow arranging that, or encouraging it more. But he would have rather I'd stay with an abuser because it was a man and he was going to take care of me. So I think that, we have the same I know, Elizabeth, we have a lot in common, hun. I know. We're going to have to sit down one of these days. Um, and so it's really, you still percolate? Oh, I love that. I still have one. I don't do it all the time, but when I know I have a project and I'm going to have multiple cups of coffee, instead of using my Keurig, I put my Corningware coffee pot right on the stove and percolate. It's the best coffee. Um, so I think that, there's evolution. The 70s, we had a lot of hippies. People were breaking conventions, right? Men and women. Free love, free sex, letting everything kind of just really hang out. And then it sort of came back to conventionality in some ways. But what also happened in the 70s, late 70s, and definitely in the 80s and 90s was divorce. So as women were getting the right to vote, as women were getting credit cards and checkbooks in their own accounts, and they had to go back to work because what was happening is husbands were divorcing, leaving families and starting a whole new life. And they weren't required at that time to take care of the people that were supposed to be their loved ones, their first families. And I have a lot to say on that, and I'm just not going to. I'm trying to heal that part. It's a balance. I was the same way. So yeah, I respect that. Then let's see. Elizabeth says, my dad has really grown up over time and he saw the plight of my mom was in, but never acknowledged it with her. But he would tell me, I'm teaching you because I don't want you to have to depend on a man. Isn't that great? And there's nothing wrong. Look, and again, this is old school. So newer Newer generations don't have the same thought as I do. I'm going to say that up front. If I go out to dinner, and this was when I was dating, it's been a long time. Yes, I would like someone to open the door for me. Yes, I would like someone to hold the chair out for me. There was an elegance to that. There was an attentiveness to that, right? I wanted someone to have engaging conversations with me. And I could talk about almost everything, not everything, but I could have a sports conversation because that was my dad. In order for me to build a relationship with my dad, I sat on the couch with him on Sundays and we watched the New York Giants and whoever was playing. Or if it was the New York Mets and whoever was playing, or the Rangers, I learned the value or what it meant to be included in his world. I didn't get 90% of it, but it didn't matter at the time. And then as I went off to school, and I was surrounded by so many cultures. He grew up in the Bronx in New York. It was Italian, Jewish, Irish, Black. No sugarcoating on any of that. That's just what it was. And every block or every street had its own value, right? So when I went to college, I had no preconceived opinions about anybody. And though it was never talked about in my family, my dad was one of 7. One of his sisters and his brother were gay. Never talked about it. But I grew up with Aunt Bee and Louise and Uncle Tom and Mike. So for me, when I finally went to school and saw gay couples, there was nothing wrong with it because I had 2 great uncles and I had 2 great aunts. They were lovely people. I wasn't raised that there was something wrong. Now, in fairness, my father was absolutely anti-gay. And there's a whole story and it's not mine to tell. But it took till very late in his life to accept those people in his life who happened to be different than him because he only associated those things with sex and not with love. Yada, yada, yada. Okay, going to jump into comments. So Scotty Boy says, I'm old school. I will still fight for a relationship to develop. Yep. And then chivalry still exists with some of us. And yeah, it's chivalry. I knew what you meant. I was with you. I was following you. So finding our voices, right, can be complicated depending on the generation you're growing up in, because those that were born and raised in the 90s and in the 2000s had a whole different evolution. Things were accepted in ways that were unique. Now, I grew up, I was a young woman protesting for people in my life, for AIDS research, for pediatric AIDS, for gay rights, for women's rights, and pro-choice rights, because I'm pro-life, pro-choice, meaning I'm pro, it's my freaking body. Get your hands off of it unless I give you permission. Amen. End of discussion. But having said that, as the gay community sort of became entrenched in society and more accepted because there were stories put out where families were shunning their children because of their faith, and then realized over time that wasn't right. And then with the AIDS epidemic and the quilts, people started to come around a little bit differently. Enter transgender and the kerfluffle of everybody's opinions and ignorance, not understanding what it means. Hello, Jimena. Thanks for being here. Has caused a wrinkle. And now instead of it being open for discussion, there's venom coming back. So it's finding your voice. And that's really what I wanted to talk about. I'm going to temper that for a minute. And then through all of this is, how do we build community, right? Because we can't do this alone. There's the importance of creating these circles of conversation or shared stories or safe spaces. And we want that for each other, I think. I want to be able to say, I don't get he, she, they, them, whatever. I don't understand. I want to have that conversation with people who are enlightened, who understand it, who are they, them. And for me, I can read it. It doesn't mean anything to me. It just doesn't make sense. I can't, and I sound like my nana, when she probably was struggling with all sorts of things. So it's creating groups, whether it's here on YouTube, whether it's in our communities, reaching out and creating online support groups or local gatherings. And one of the things that, beautifully Mish has done with the village is created a space for creators to have their own voices. You don't have to go watch them if they're not your cup of tea. It's just that, yes, Scotty, it's a tough one for me, but I'm willing to be educated. It doesn't apply to me today, but I have great nieces and nephews. How the hell do I know what's going to happen in the future and how they're going to want to identify? So it's always a conversation. And in my community here, I may be exposed to it, and I'm happy to have those discussions. When I left my job, I left the opportunity of having these more engaged topics and discussions because I don't have a job anymore. So it's not like I can really go around the water cooler and go, oh my God, did you blah, 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 and have a whole conversation. No, it doesn't make you a bad guy. It doesn't. So I'm going to take a breath. And pause, because this discussion is going to open up what I'd like to talk about next week, which is women's voices and women's rights and what's happening here in society in the US and abroad globally, because it's frightening. And it doesn't have to be political per se, but it is political, because I just watched a news thing where two gentlemen were like, well, I don't understand why women don't want to stay home and raise children. If I could have humanly jumped through the screen and bitch slapped him, I would have. You're assuming everyone's getting married. You're assuming that I want to have children. You're assuming I want to be taken care of and dependent on a man. And P.S., you're assuming men are going to take care of their families. So there's ignorance there. And it really sort of triggered for me this violation of my soul and my spirit. And I don't want to be that angry woman, because that is not all men. And so what does it mean, and how do we have these conversations? So that'll be next week. Okay, so let me hold on, people. I want to just come up and see some of these comments. Yes, Jimena, we're sending love to you and your dad and your family, your mom, your sister. And so we're sending you so much love, hon. And anybody else that's, having just a time of it. Elizabeth says, I have a housemate now. My son brought her in because she was transitioning privately, but she came out at work and her family found out. I don't even know what to say to that, because that is such a lonely place to be when you don't have support. They don't have to like it, right? But don't they? See, I'm not a parent, so I don't want to say you have to love your child, but in my heart of hearts, don't you love your child no matter what? When they were running around and ripping off their clothes and playing in the mud and screaming and, doing all sorts of things, causing tantrums, you loved them through it. When they went to school and they challenged you, you loved them through it. When they fought with you. So why is it that we can't listen? You don't have to understand it per se, but listen to it and honor at least that someone else's way of being. And again, I'm not a parent, so I really am I'm on slippery slope here. Mish says the separation of individualism, but not allowing that to divide us while doing so, embracing differences with respect, curiosity, and openness, filled with love, acceptance, freedom to just be a fucking man. Oh, I swore. See, I told you I was trying not to. Dang. All right. Well, yeah, Scotty's like, I'm okay with it. I just don't understand it. A guy tried to cut my steak for me on a date, and I was baffled. Oh, do I have stories? And it got thrown back at me, right? So Elizabeth, I'm going to just take 5 seconds here, 5 minutes. It was a blind date, a fix up from a friend's husband. And we'd been talking on the phone first. We get to the restaurant. Now it was chilly, so I wasn't all dolled up, but I certainly looked fine. But it was cold. It was winter in New England. And we went to this restaurant. He started with the waitress who had an accent. He's like, I want an English woman. I want someone who can talk the language. Now, he didn't know me. He wasn't trying to make a good impression. This was his genuine self. I ordered a salad. I'm like, I am getting the freak out of here. And I didn't say anything at first. She still came back because she was our waitress, and I was really kind to her. And then he was like, well, I'll take care of our meals. And I looked at him and I said, I'm sorry, I don't understand. You're going to pay for my meal? I said, how generous? He's like, no, I'm going to pick it out. I'm going to pick the menu. Now, it was kind of like the way I'm saying it. I'm going to pick it for you. There was nothing chivalrous about it. There was nothing charming about it. It was like, me caveman, me order, me do. And I'm like, in what world do my friends, do they not know me? Have they not been around me for 10 years, 15 years at that point? I'm like, I could not eat my salad fast enough, and he dawdled eating his food. And when he dropped me off, I knew he was leaning in for the kiss, and I popped out of that car and I'm like, thank you. Take care of yourself now. I didn't even give him the opportunity for anything. I was so offended. Now, flip side, a lovely guy, sweet as pie, took me out to dinner. He's like, can I recommend something for you? Because we had worked together. So as a group, we all kind of knew each other, and this was our first one-on-one kind of thing. And I said, well, what are you recommending? And we had this lovely conversation, and it was really sweet. And unfortunately, we didn't jive, or I didn't jive with him, but kind, respectful. It was a whole different approach. He took the time to know me. He was incredibly respectful to the wait staff. And, when people show you who they are, that's who they are. So, just to digress for a second, having somebody cut your steak, I'd be like, oh, back off, Freddy Krueger. Yes, don't touch my food. Let's see. All right, let me just stroll down. I'll buy your steak, but I ain't gonna gut it for you. Yeah, unless I have a broken arm. You know what I mean? Like I have an impairment of some sort. Don't become my food. Um, and so, right, exactly, Scotty. Do you need to be the mother bird and chew the food and shove it down my throat for me? And it was so caveman and it was so disrespectful. And I felt like he was testing me. Um, and that's only a small indication of how controlling this person was going to be. And I had already been averse to that. And I had already been exposed to controlling people. And it sounds like Elizabeth has as well. And especially if you have a controlling father or a strong father figure who dictates certain things to you, finding your voice to say, oh, no, no, stop the presses. That's not going to work for me. And if you're trying to impress me, that's not going to work. And that's why I'm so concerned about what's happening to women in this season of our lives. Elizabeth said, maybe I don't understand, but I want to be the one that helps them figure things out. The mother showed up here 3 months later. Oh, all right. Well, that would be a really interesting discussion. Let's see. I'm dying over here. Scotty says, I love my mom, but really, my mom never coddled me in that way. This is so funny. Can you cut my meat smaller? I can't bite that big. Oh, sweet Jesus, I'm telling you. So now you see where I'm going with this is finding our voices. And, you know, if you think of communities like hands holding this glowing flame, we are the glowing flame. We are sharing the light. And we want to be part of a community. And I want to understand. I don't have to agree, but I would like to understand. So, when we talk about acknowledging these turbulent times where it feels like our voices are clashing with fear and division and uncertainty, our own voices can be, drowned out. And the beauty of us today is that we're not here to add to the noise, right? We're here to create a sacred pause. This is an opportunity for us where we can remember who we are, reclaim the parts of ourselves that may have been silenced, and step forward together in light. I almost said step into the light, but that would be a whole different conversation. And I don't think we're talking NDEs today. It's kind of finding your voice as a woman. And I can only speak as a woman, Scotty. We have cultural, familial, and internalized stories that sometimes were meant to keep us small and in our places. It's better to be quiet than to rock the boat, right? And I'd rather change that narrative to be my voice carries wisdom and it can create ripples of change. It can influence by my actions. Now, if I'm a witch on a broom and I don't allow Scotty as a man or any of you in this chat, Elizabeth, Jimena, Aria, Mish, and anyone else that's here that I may have missed, I apologize. Indigo, I don't know if she's still here. If I was like, well, you don't know what you're talking about, and that's just wrong, and you have your head up your ass. Okay. Yeah, that's not the voice of wisdom. That's not inclusion. It's, a better way to approach it, and this is where words matter, is, Mish, I don't know a lot about that topic, and so I don't think I can speak to it, but share with me your perspective so I can understand where you're coming from. And I think that's where we're missing in conversations. Tell me what you mean, right? Because often I don't know where you're coming from. It could be cultural. Italian, we have a whole different language. It's more Americanized now, but you get an old time Italian that comes from the boat here, and you're still going back and forth with old ways. Stereotypes exist. I don't like it, but they exist. So let's understand them. And that's where I think I would want to reroute the conversation. Oh, you're I'll use India because India has a caste system, right? So if you're in a certain lower caste system, they Brian, oh my goodness. So happy to see you here. Um, Look, Scotty, you have another male in the chat. If you don't understand, then it could be adversarial. And I have to hush the dogs. Give me a second. I'm going to let them out. Talk amongst yourselves. I apologize. This little itsy bitsy dog walked by, and my two little Shih Tzus think they're Great Danes and decided to let the whole neighborhood know there's another dog coming. So it's just a perspective, right? And when I first went to college, I met a lovely young woman from Lebanon. Ignorantly, I didn't know anything about Lebanon. I didn't know anything about the Middle East. It wasn't my bailiwick. I had no exposure. And her country was in war. Like, it was awful. I had no judgment. It was a way for me. Yeah, the puppies come first. Um, it's really, it's just fascinating that in having the opportunity to find our voice, we have to hear other people. We have to be exposed. I was exposed to different religions when I was in college. I really only knew about Catholic, Protestant, Judaism, knew nothing about Muslims, knew nothing about the Quran, knew nothing about the Dalai Lama, knew nothing about any other form of religion. And I was exposed to pretty much everything. There was the Hare Krishnas that every Thursday they had spaghetti night, and my friends would go. It was free spaghetti. They're college students. That's how they got you. And Jehovah Witnesses, and there were a whole bunch of things that I had been exposed to that I never would have been exposed to. Yeah, Brian, that must be so exciting, right? And especially from a different age perspective too. And Brian, we were talking about this earlier, that when you talk about generations, this current generation that's in college, they have a different perspective on building relationships. They're fine being on their phone and texting you while you're 3 rows ahead of them in the class. Conversations are more confrontational and uncomfortable for a generation that is more comfortable being insulated. That is my thought. Okay, so I grew up in a highly segregated city but through a school we met all people our parents tried to shield us from. Yeah, that was my dad. My dad from the Bronx. I don't know why everyone's yelling, and I thought I heard someone call my name. Sorry, guys. Let me just peek. The door's closed. The dogs can't get out, so the neighbors can shut up. Um, he was anti-black. His whole philosophy was his experience as a young, wise ass Italian kid in the Bronx, growing up in those different neighborhoods I talked about earlier. At the end of his life, he had tremendous neighbors that were multicultural. And my father adored these people. And it changed for him that it wasn't all people being certain ways. I think that was the greatest gift that I could observe. I wish he could have done it with me, but he didn't. All right, so where am I here? Dun dun. Free Sketty. I know, Scotty, it was the funniest thing. It'd be like, Thursday night, we're going to the Krishnas. I'm like, oh my God. And Brian says, I'm older than everybody in all my classes. The oldest prof is 39. I can't help but think of them as babies. 100%. And so unenlightened and uninformed. They haven't lived life. Right? The advantage of going now is you've lived life. The disadvantage is that wouldn't it have been cool to be with these kids in their age range and just debate crap till sitting around, if you're, drink beers or sodas or ice cream or coffee. And I miss that. And I had a lot of heated discussions because I was incredibly ignorant and sheltered as a child. So in my conversations, which is where my voice comes from, I thought I knew everything. And then I started to learn. Oh, people from this country do it this way. People from this country do it this way. Women in Lebanon do this, but people in, this part of the world do that. It was fascinating. And for me, I was more excited about that and really wanted to travel the world. Let's see. So crazy how, oops. Mish says, so crazy how many layers of conditioning we have all had to go through. And that's, and I don't want this to be parent bashing because for me, it's what they knew, right? It's what they knew. They tried to do better. Most of the time they didn't. And they kept their prejudices and they project them. And I've had these conversations before on the channel, and I'd love to have it again, in that if you grew up as a Catholic kid, every other religion was fake because we had the in. Now, you judge on that. And your ways to think your way is the right way. And this Methodist thinks this, and this Baptist thinks this, and this, Hasidic Jew versus conservative of reform. There's so many iterations. And then you get into Hinduism and is it Sufism and Sikhs? I don't know if they're religions, so I don't want to be ignorant here. But you have different cultures. Then you have the Dalai Lama who practices a whole different way of thinking. You have the Chinese that had a different way of thinking. For a long time, the Russians had an Orthodox view, and that all, they chucked that out the window. So I think it's just, unique. Scotty boy, I grew up in Hawaii, a melting pot, not so much against other races, but women were supposed to play their role. Yeah. And I don't think that's, changed. Yes. Everyone else was doomed. Yes, absolutely, Elizabeth. All right. Yes, you are following the narratives. You only know what you know until you know different. I love that. And that's true. And that's part of why I wanted to have this discussion is finding your voice doesn't mean that we have to exclude other people's ideas, other people's opinions and thoughts. Um, it's really difficult to have this conversation without bringing politics in, and I'm not going to today. That's going to be next week. And it's still not going to be about politics per se, but it is going to be about the oppression and suppression of women in this current craziness of 2025. It's only 8 months into the damn year. And I'm like, I have 3 more years of this not knowing if I have bodily rights or my own bank account. What is my brother going to become my male conservator? Good freaking luck with that one, people. So in finding our voices, right? It's like my worth is based on how much I give or sacrifice. That's the old narrative. What I want my new narrative to be is I am valuable simply because I exist, right? My worth is my worth. I am who I am. For men in my family, strength means pushing through without showing weakness. And that actually applied to me as well. My father couldn't tolerate being a wimp. You did not shake hands like a fish. You were firm. And I carried that throughout my entire professional life. And I had men say, "Oh my God, that's some grip." And it'd be like, yes, my father told me that my worth was in my handshake. So instead of sort of pushing through that, it's like my strength is in my authenticity. Vulnerability is power. And one of the things that I'd like us to, well, I don't want to jump the topics, but we're going to be talking about vulnerability a lot in the next couple of weeks. And then shedding the generational conditioning, right? So the old narrative, this is just how things are in my family or in my community. You stay in your place. And I wanted to shake that up. And I want the truth to be, for me, I honor where I come from. And I choose to walk in a new way that aligns with my soul, with who I am, with what I want to do, right? That's, to me, what's really important. I don't want to have to measure up and compete to be like someone else in order to be seen, recognized, valued. If my house isn't as big as my cousin's, does that mean that I'm less valuable? I don't measure up. I'm not good enough. In my head, no. No one has my exact voice. My contribution is irreplaceable. It's just my contribution. All right, I want to come back to comments because I'm seeing the chat go a little bit fast. Dun, 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 dun. All right, I see. I grew up in Hawaii was where I was. Okay. Yes, that's the narrative. Sufism is a mystical dimension of Islam. Okay, thank you for that. I knew they were entwined. I just didn't know how. And that actually is something that I want to learn. And unfortunately, where I live right now, I would have to travel to take some classes. So I'm looking to do an online class to learn about different religions. I have a ginormous book. I'm not going to read it. I'm going to blame the heart attack. Ever since my heart attack and my NDE, I used to read voraciously. It takes me longer to grasp things. I don't have the energy for that. And I want to study this stuff. Let's see. I know here. So I know my truth might hurt some people, but that shouldn't mean I should hide it in protecting others from feeling uncomfortable. In fact, it might save someone else. My truth is just as important. Mish, yes, it is just as important. And I think, how we share our truth is also the key. If we come off like well, my way is the right way, and this is how it's supposed to be. And okay, back off, baby. Um, this is what I know to be true for me. Blah 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 blah. Now you've personalized it, and it's you. This is your thought, and oh yeah, that's an idea. I have some really good friends. I consider them incredibly smart. And I sometimes will sneak, well, what do you think? Because I don't know what I think on certain topics, especially when it comes to politics. I get very overwhelmed by it and incensed. And there's a different thought methodology that some of my friends have, or used to have. And so I can ask them questions without feeling stupid. Now, do I always agree with what they've shared with me? No. Most of the time, yes. And then then I can get educated, because one of the I have two brothers, and one brother thinks very differently from me. And I decided when he shared things with me, because they were controversial, I was going to research, because I don't want to be angry, and I don't want to hate what he thinks. I do now understand why he thinks the way he does. I still wish he would come to my side, but he doesn't have to for me to love him. And that's the point I wanted to get to. Um, let's see. Yeah, Mish, just to get your brain to think it. I like a good handshake. Yes, Brian, absolutely. Um, I know. Tired of hiding my truth. I loved that in your boobs video. That was a great video. Um, eye contact and a firm handshake. Yes. And I will tell you that over the years, I've had a hard time making more eye contact with people, mostly out of fear, or I've even said shame, and I'm not really sure where that comes from, but I'm better at it now. And I'm making more of an effort, especially when I'm meeting somebody, to acknowledge them and look at them and see them, because I think that has a lot of value. Um, oh, Scotty boy, I'm telling you, if you didn't see Mish's video, it's very informative about women, just in case you didn't see it. Um, there's so many ass. I love this. I have to post this up there. Um, there's so many asshats that are asshats because they bought their accountability on the backs of others. And yes, that's so true. Asshats. I love that one. Um, and the old version of that from my family were fuckwads. I don't know if that rings any familiar bells to anybody. I don't use that term, but it's appropriate in this discussion. Um, yeah, Elizabeth, I've always been fascinated by other cultures. I went with two friends that I had just started to get to know, and they took me to an Ethiopian restaurant. And I had no idea I mean, I really was terrified. I'm like, all I knew were there were starving people in Ethiopia. What the hell am I going to eat on my dinner plate? Not only was it fascinating and delicious, it was interesting. And just as an aside, in case everybody doesn't know, food is served on this big platter and you eat with your hands. And yes, there's some bread and there's things that you grab the food with. Um, it was mostly vegetarian, so I don't even know what I ate. I know there was a couple of pieces that were spicy that I could not. I took a bite and I was like, oh, that's not going to work well with my stomach, but it was delicious. And so that opened up for me to try Japanese food. I couldn't do Indian food because of the spices. And anytime they said, oh, it's not that spicy, I was sick for days. I have a very delicate tum tum. Um, let's see. Um, ah, Crystal's here. Thank you for being here. You missed a very engaging conversation. Um, we've been talking about all sorts of things. Really funny, but welcome. Um, Yes, thank you, Elizabeth. Please, please, please hit the like button. Consider sharing with a friend or in your groups or on your channel. Um, and subscribe. Like and subscribe. It really does help. I'm hoping to get to 200 subscribers by the end of this year. I know some of my friends here have just exploded with having more subscribers. I'm okay. I know I'm not everybody's cup of tea, um, but we are going to have some more engaging conversations, and I'd love to be able to reach out and have more people know about it. In September, we're going to be talking about women's health a little bit and menopause. Um, and another friend surviving and living with her MS and how she's doing it positively. And she wrote a book, and I really can't wait to have her on. And then there's a couple of you that I have yet to reach out to, but I will, that I like your stories and I like your channels, and I'd love for you to come on and talk about them. And so, yeah. Uh, avert eye contact, avert eye contact. I must have been programmed that way. And I don't know where that comes from. Well, I do, Elizabeth. So, coming from a Catholic background and Italian, if I looked at a boy directly, I was a hoe. And from the Bronx, you were called a hooer. So I was a whore if I was looking at a boy or a man. I was giving them the wrong impression. So by looking at them directly, it made me kind of a a naughty girl. And so I had to overcome that for a long time. And then as I did come out into my own sexuality and, was interested, um, and trying to look at someone, I was like, do they think I'm a whore because I'm looking at them? Oh my God. How do I? And there was nobody to talk to. So that's the other thing is sex was always taboo. Sexual experiences and feelings and thoughts. And today's generation, they talk about everything and they may not do everything, but they talk about everything. And I'm just like, you go, people. Um, let's see. Scotty, I wore an ass hat once. Oh, yes, F wads. Oh, my God. It is very New Jersey, hence my family from New York, the Bronx, Triborough Bridge, and, all that kind of thing. Um, oh, Aria, I guess she's gone for the night. So thank you for being here, Aria. Um, Elizabeth said that my friend dragged me to a Bengali restaurant and I went kicking and screaming, but I had to act right because his family was there. I would love to know. I don't even know what Bengali food is. So there's ignorance right there. Um, Brian says, I refer to said individuals as unpleasant, and I don't like unpleasant people. Yeah, don't even get me started with the politics, Brian. I'm telling you, I will go down that insane thought process. Elizabeth says, I was like, I only eat arroz con pollo. No, please don't make me eat hummus. Oh. And Brian says, one of the things I loved about my time in the Navy was getting to eat food in different places. I can only imagine. One of my girlfriends, she was on the Navy ship and she was as Irish as the day is long. And she said, we grew up with the blandest food. And she has the most interesting palate now. So I think that's where it comes from. I know I'm a little bit past time, guys. So oops, there's a gnat in front of me. I started going to more channels than just tarot. That really helped me meet new circles of friends. Yes, and I have to say, I really love your tarot channel. Yes, same from Puerto Rican parents. You were being fresh. Oh, yeah, I'm telling you. That's a whole different. Thank you for putting it out there. If you guys want to see Mish's boobs video, this is the link. So feel free to click. Yes, Scotty. I was for a long time. I thought I was a dirty girl, and then violence happened, and I ended up feeling like a dirty girl. So I guess maybe it was self fulfilling, but it was really the Roman Catholic Church, my family, the way my father thought. Now, my father was the first one to comment on every girl. He had his own Italian deli, and every girl that came in afterwards, he was talking about her in the back room. But if I said anything about a boy being cute or I was looking at him and he saw me, yeah, I was, it was something that lived with me for a really long time. Um, so whatever, it's times have changed and now I'm settled in my aloneness with my puppies. Um, let's see. Yeah, it's conditioning. So behind now. Oh, don't worry about it. Okay, so um thank you for being here so much. I really, really, really appreciate it. This was so wonderful. Thank you for engaging in the discussion. I think it was fun. I think it was important. We are going to talk next week about, I don't know if I'll do it on Tuesday or Thursday because it's a new month. I usually talk about the new law of the universe. And I may wrap that up in with the discussion that I want to talk about, which just from a highlight perspective, let me just get back to my dum. I can tell you, oops, I can tell you in a minute. Here it is. Oh, I swear I wrote it here. Where did it go? Nope. Where's my page? Huh. I don't know. Well, I had it written down, and it was really about women and what's happening in this current environment, and how do we get to stay strong, and how do we get to keep our voices, and how do we stand up for ourselves. So that's really what I want it to be. And how do we welcome the men, Scotty, Brian, anybody else that's on that watches afterwards? How do we include men? Because excluding them is not the solution. And if we tell men what makes us crazy by diminishing us, $50 says a man's going to say, I had no idea that I made you feel that way by saying X, Y, and Z. So I think it's really going to be a great engaged topic. And then I'm going to have some guests. And I'm really looking forward to that. So just finalizing some dates. And that's it. So as always, you guys, let me see. Mish said, I just want to get to the rest of the comments and then I'm going to let you guys go. Yeah, you had to act a certain way or else. Mish says, I think for me, being adopted at birth has given me such a different perspective. I feel like I belong everywhere and nowhere at all. And Mish, I think that's a great discussion to have. I don't know what that would be like. I know I felt like an alien in my family, but it's not the same thing as being adopted and not really knowing. You're welcome, Elizabeth. Just make me a sandwich. I'm good. You're too far away. I made a great caprese salad today, sandwich from my garden. Fresh basil, fresh tomatoes, not fresh mozzarella. I'm not there yet, but I am going to learn. So along that line, you guys, thank you all so very much for being here. It means so much to me. I appreciate the conversation. As always, I send you with love, with light, with healing, with compassion, sprinkled with joy and laughter and giggles. So until next time, I send you with so many blessings. And I'm so grateful.
I'm like an ice skater dancing out for the first time on the form solid ice. No more fears, no sorrows, because I love the uncommon tomorrows. This life has barely begun, but now I know what I wanna do. I know what I wanna be, reborn. Finally feeling I am fulfilling my destiny, with a heart filled of gratefulness, happiness, joy, overflowing of kindness and love. Oh, so much love. I feel like love is the supportive pillar in my soul, and it only grows each day. I'm reborn in love.